Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase here on the channel, highlighting the many dev submitted games and demos we play. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video, please get in touch. And we are starting off with the game Tenderfoot Tactics. This is it's described as an open world style tactical RPG, where you'll be moving around the world looking for clues, resources, and whatnot. But combat is all done in kind of an XCOM tactical strategy kind of layer. Now the game prides itself on the fact that there is no RNG, everything is deterministic. If it says you're going to hit for 5, you're going to hit for 5. And where the depth comes in is being able to manipulate the battlefield, such as being able to set up a ways up traps, using the environment to block or hurt enemies, and that kind of thing. And it kind of is a very similar style to XCOM 2's Grand Campaign, but as opposed to it being more of a geoscape that kind of focus, this is an open world exploration. So you're going to be wandering around trying to figure out what is going on, and it's a very clever take on that kind of design. Now, it can be a little tricky in terms of grasping everything that you're trying to do. And if your characters are killed, you're going to have to figure out ways of healing them. I'm not sure that was possible from what we played of it, but this is one of those games that I feel like there is an audience for it, but it is on that slower side in terms of the general pacing. Because of the fact that you are exploring this world, it means that you're not really having that kind of focal point of geoscape to battle to research in terms of that loop that we saw from the XCOM side of things. But if you are a fan of tactical strategy games or looking for one that is a little bit more free form than other ones on the market, then definitely check out Tenderfoot Tactics. Up now we have Volta-X. And this is an interesting one. It's described as an RTS, but I'm not sure if I would go that far with it. It reminds me a lot of, there was this Dragon Quest like slime game where you had like giant castles fighting each other. But for this one, our concept is that we are controlling giant robots, or Voltas, and we're trying to see who is the best robot handler of them all. So the gameplay itself involves you cultivating your various people who have different skills, different preferences in terms of parts that they'll want to work with, and then controlling them in battle by moving them from part to part. It's kind of similar to FTL in that respect, that if you want a part to function, you need to have somebody piloting it. So as you're fighting, as the enemy is fighting you, you can target specific parts. If you can take it out, you knock out that specific gear. If the enemy targets a part with one of your characters in it, it can hurt them and take them out as well. So the entire game is set up in kind of 1v1 battles, with you returning back to the hub in terms of upgrades, unlocking new things, etc., etc. And it's a very nifty idea in terms of giant robot battles, and we definitely need more giant robot games, I'm sure everyone can agree with. The problem that I ran into in terms of balance is that it seems like 9 times out of 10 your best strategy is, well, go for the head, because when you knock out the head of the robot, the whole body goes down and you automatically win. So it doesn't really incentivize you to target arms, legs, and other pieces, because they do not take away from actually the main health of your bot. And the game does boast a lot in terms of different parts you can use, different strategies, etc., etc. Now, I don't know if they've added anything new in terms of systems or mechanics. We played this about a year or so ago, maybe a little bit more than that from the time of this recording. But I would say this is definitely an interesting game. If you like the kind of FTL, moving characters around to perform actions style of combat, I would check this one out. But I'm curious to see if anyone decides to take this kind of mecha design further. We now turn to the Power of 10. The footage that you see is taken from the game in early access and may not represent the current version of it. But this is kind of a top-down space action roguelike, where it's our job to fly around from galaxy to galaxy, making sure that each system is safe from invading aliens. And to do that, we need to harvest resources, bring them back to their respective planets, and deal with any invaders that come in the meantime. When you complete areas, you'll be able to gain upgrades, find new weapons, and gain additional elements that can be used. There is persistence in the form of new ships that you can unlock. Now, for this one, this is a title that we haven't played in quite some time, and it has been early access, I believe, for at least a year now. And in terms of the general gameplay, I would say it certainly works. Since we played it, according to the update notes, they have added in persistent difficulty, new elements that can be unlocked on each run. And from what I played of it, I think the main issue that I had at the time was that it felt like there wasn't a lot of variance. That the runs themselves just all relied on having to get resources, bring them back, get into a fight, rinse and repeat. Looking over the notes as I was doing this recording, there have been changes to the general pacing, focusing more on killing enemy ships for resources as opposed to doing mining. So this is definitely a game that if you like what you see here in terms of the footage, I would say at least give this one a check because it has grown since this footage was taken. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for this week's showcase. And as always, if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my offerings of books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. Now we have Train Your Minibot. This is a puzzle platformer style game. What you're seeing in terms of footage was taken from pretty much day 1 of its early access and may not represent the current version of the game. So this is a series of different puzzles where your job is to set up miscellaneous environment or miscellaneous objects in the environment here to get your robot from point A to point B. Everything is kind of like physics driven or kind of physics simulated, as you will launch your robot using cans, springs, set up platforms, etc., etc. And once things have been set up, you then control them real time. From what I was talking to the developer about when we were showing this one off, there are additional ways you can go. There'll be like bonuses you can collect in the middle of the levels and things along those lines. And I was enjoying this one. Again, I always like when games do interesting things with scale and having to, bounce around like small or being a small thing in a large space and trying to figure out how the best way to get across. Now, again, from the early access build that we had, there really wasn't a lot we could really take a look at. And I know the game has been updated a lot since. So if you do like kind of the action puzzle kind of design or more, I guess, organic puzzles as opposed to being more logic-based, then definitely check this one out. We now have Roundguard, and this is a game that dares to ask the question, what if we combine Peggle with an action roguelike? And I think definitively proves that anything could be a roguelike given the right circumstances. But Peggle meets action roguelike is, well, pretty much apt for what you're doing. You'll choose a character, each one comes with different gear and special abilities, and your job is to smack all the enemies in a stage, not fall into spikes, and then move on to the next. The challenge will come in based on using your different skills, finding new gear that can complement your abilities, and dealing with enemies that will have unique rules, such as you can only hit them at certain times, they may mess with the field in some way, shape, or form, and so on and so on. And yeah, again, this is one of those games that what you see is what you get. If you loved Peggle and was hoping for like progression and more things to do in it, then you're going to love Roundguard. But conversely, if you hated to play Peggle and you prefer something with a bit more control over how you play, then Roundguard is not going to work for you. But I found this combination to be very delightful, and there are additional characters, unlocks, and so on. The game has been expanded on since its release. For our final game, we turn to something a little bit different, and that is Scampr. This was submitted by a developer, and what we have here is open world squirrel exploration. It is some strange future where all the other animals have become locked or frozen in stone. And it's up to us to explore this strange world, gather acorns, and figure out what is happening. You have a complete open world to explore with a variety of squirrel-related and not so squirrel-related tasks to do. Strange enough, you can't climb any trees as a squirrel in this one. But yeah, this is another one of those games where you're either all in on this concept or you are already clicked off the video for this week. And I mean, it was a charming game. There's some things you can do in it, but definitely some optimization issues. As you can see, the game kind of stuttering here and there. And yes, I'm throwing acorns and creating giraffes now. And again, like, definitely a weird or one of the odder games that was in the spotlight. And while it isn't for me, I'm sure somebody out there has been dreaming of playing a wall-running squirrel in a vast, open, futuristic world. But with that said, we're going to wrap up the showcase here. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Do all the liking, subscribing, and commenting. If you are a developer working on a game, let me take a look at it. It does not have to be squirrel related in any regard. Please get in touch, as I'm always trying to find more games to play. Be sure to check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where it's in the art and science of games.